Disney Lorcana is nearly 3 years old, and there are now over 2,000 unique Disney Lorcana cards, some of them better than others. And in this video series, we are counting down the top 20 most powerful Disney Lorcana cards ever printed. In a previous video, we already counted down numbers 20 through 11, and if you missed it, you can watch that video by clicking right here. But now, it's time to get down to the main event. It's the top 10. Let's get down to business. Number 10, Sisu Empowered Sibling. Now, as soon as this card was printed in Ursula's Return, Ruby players rushed to find a way to use her. But if there's one thing better than having a board wipe in your deck, it's having a one-sided board wipe in your deck. And by that I mean cards that banish all of your opponent's characters without banishing yours. And that's exactly what this legendary Sisu threatens to do. Her ability, I Got This, says that when she comes into play, banish all opposing characters with strength 2 or less. Now, of course, this doesn't banish all of your opponent's characters. Anything with strength 3 or more remains. But what if you had some sneaky ways to reduce the strength in your opponent's characters? Cards like Ice Block or Sapphire Coil. These items allow you to manipulate your opponent's character strength, making them susceptible to this dragon. Now, at the time Empowered Sibling was printed, Ruby and Sapphire were already a pretty popular ink combination, and most of those decks were item builds. So it was a pretty easy thing to work in Sisu and Ice Block. In fact, there was a whole archetype called Sisu on Ice that was really oppressive to play against. And there are two more things about this card that make Sisu a lock to appear on this list. The first is her 3 lore. After she enters play and banishes your opponent's characters, you can then utilize her to close out the game pretty quickly, especially if you paired her with a lucky dime. And lastly, although she is expensive, costing 8 ink, she's a Floodborn, and so you can shift her in early, in this case on turn 6, if you have a shift target available. And one of the reasons Emboldened Warrior was so good is because she has 2 very meta relevant and very good shift targets with Empowered Sibling and Daring Visitor. Both these cards saw play. Empowered Sibling was one of the cards that made Ruby decks a menace pre-rotation, and when she rotated out of Core Constructed, so did Ruby decks. Number 9, Tramp Street Smart Dog. Now, this Amber Emerald Tramp is the first dual ink card that we're seeing on this list. Of course, dual ink cards have a real downside. You have to play them in decks with a very specific ink pairing, restricting how you can use them. And it makes sense that this card has this drawback because everything else about it is absolutely nuts. The fact that this card exists is bonkers. Now, Tramp is fairly expensive with an ink cost of 7, but that's where his first ability, Now It's a Party, comes into play. And this ability says that his cost is reduced by 1 for each other character that you have in play. And when you have a deck which puts a whole bunch of characters on the board early and uses cards like 3-cost Lady to cheat out extra characters, Tramp can be played fairly early. In fact, it's pretty easy to play him on turn 4, allowing you to establish a 2/6 character that quests for 2. But then there's his second ability, House Pickings. And this ability says that when you play him, you can draw a card for each other character that you have in play, and then discard that many cards. So, for example, if you have 4 characters in play, you draw 4, discard 4. If you have 7 characters in play, you draw 7, discard 7. And that ability is actually kind of incredible because it enables you to do 2 things. First, you can filter through your deck to find very specific cards and combo pieces that you need. As you can imagine, if you were digging 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards down or more, you're liable to find the card that you need for the situation that you're in. As a fun note, one thing that players love to do is string these tramps together, because if you're doing the math, every time you play a tramp, it reduces the next one by 1. And so you can play a tramp, find a tramp, play a tramp, find a tramp, and eventually you're playing free tramps. And that's nuts. But the other thing it allows you to do is to fill your discard pile with cards that you can use later. Perhaps cards like Lilo Escape Artist, which can slide on out of there onto your board. Or perhaps cards that you can recur with Circle of Life. Or maybe you've got a big scary character named Chernabog in your deck who gets 1 cheaper for every character in your discard pile. In fact, the original meta deck built around Tramp Street Smart Dog was called Chernadogs because it made use of this combo. And one of the reasons that deck was so good is that on the play you could be very aggressive and win the game early, and on the draw you had a really busted line involving this Tramp. Play a character on turn 1. Play 2 1-cost characters on turn 2. On turn 3 you also play 2 characters. On turn 4, you then have 5 characters in play and 3 ink. You can then play a Tramp Street Smart Dog for 2, draw 5 cards, discard 5 cards. If you find another tramp, you can play that tramp for 1, draw 6 cards, discard 6 cards. If you find another tramp, you can play him for free and repeat. If you don't, perhaps you've managed to find a Chernabog. With all that discarding, you probably have 10 characters in your discard pile, so you can then play that Chernabog for free. That is a ridiculous opening that's almost impossible to overcome. Overall, Tramp is a ridiculous card, and it's not surprising that he's been hounding the meta ever since he was printed. Number 8, Madame Mim Fox. When this Madame Mim first appeared in Disney Lorcana's second set, Rise of the Floodborn, it didn't seem like it was going to be one of the defining cards of the format. I mean, a 4/3 with Rush that costs 3 is pretty good, but it came with an ability that seemed like a bit of a drawback. Her ability says that when you play her, you have to return one of your characters to your hand or banish Madame Mim Fox immediately. And it seemed like this was meant to be a drawback, but it didn't take players long to realize that this ability was incredibly powerful. Her drawback turned out to be a massive advantage. There are so many uses for this ability. You could return an exerted character to your hand to protect it. You could return a character that has an enter play ability to your hand to make use of that ability again. You could return an early game character that's already done its work back to your hand so you can use it for ink, protecting one of your late game cards. And she also worked really well, by design, with the Merlin animals from this set. All of those cards had an ability that activated when the card entered play and left play. For example, Merlin Goat gave you a lure when it entered play and when it left play. So it was a common strategy to play Merlin Goat and then use Madame Mim Fox to bounce the goat back to your hand. Another popular card to synergize with Madame Mim Fox was Merlin Crab. Merlin Crab gives Challenger +3 upon entering and leaving play. So if Merlin Crab was already on the board, you can bounce it back to hand with the Fox, giving Challenger 3 to the Fox, and now it's rushing for 7. And this was a very popular way to control Queen's Castles and other big cards. Over time, Madame Mim Fox became a staple in most Amethyst decks, and it helped define the bounce-centric identity of this ink color. Number 7, A Whole New World. When A Whole New World was first revealed in the first chapter, experienced TCG players immediately compared it to Wheel of Fortune, one of the most iconic and powerful draw effects in TCG history. Like its Magic the Gathering counterpart, A Whole New World forces both players to discard their entire hands and draw 7 new cards, creating explosive swings in momentum and refilling resources. The card quickly became a staple of Steel Stong decks and many Sapphire Steel strategies where players could make maximum use of its power by singing it with a 5-cost character, leaving their ink free to play cards that they just drew off it. And beyond drawing new cards, this card is also incredibly disruptive to your opponent's game plans by forcing them to discard carefully curated hands and make do with random draws. In fact, one of the most annoying things a Steel Song deck could do is shift out a 5-cost character on turn 2 or 3, immediately play A Whole New World, forcing you to discard your carefully altered hand. This card also allowed players to pursue alternate win conditions and some fun strategies. For example, you could easily deck out your opponent by stringing a bunch of these together combined with some other cards. There were also some really fun Jafar wheel decks which paired A Whole New World with Jafar Striking Illusionist, a card that says when he's exerted on your turn, you gain a lore for every card that you draw. And you can see how those cards would work well together. There are a few cards that have shaped Lorcana deck building and strategy quite like A Whole New World. After all, there's a reason that Wheel of Fortune has been banned or restricted in multiple formats. Number 6, Popsicle. Now it might seem strange for this silly little 1-cost ice treat item to be on a top cards list, but Popsicle is one of the most important engine pieces and combo cards in Disney Lorcana history. Introduced in Disney Lorcana's second set, Rise of the Floodborn, this 1-cost item quickly became foundational to many item-based strategies, thanks to its ability to replace itself when it's played. Now this allows you to put an item in play to use later at effectively no cost to hand size. And this was useful because there are quite a few cards with very powerful abilities that are fueled by items. For example, Hiram Flaversham's ability to banish an item upon entering play and questing to allow you to draw 2 cards, or Bell Apprentice Inventor, a card that can enter play for free if you banish an item. But this card really shined when it was paired with a couple of crabs, Tamatoa So Shiny and Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, because these cards allow you to recur items from your discard pile, bringing them back to your hand so you can use them again. And because you can freely banish Popsicle at any time to heal one of your characters, you can place it in the discard pile to pull it out whenever you wanted. And so you could set up these really powerful loops where you're banishing Popsicles, pulling them back to your hand, playing them, banishing them again. It was nuts. Sapphire item decks could draw a ton of cards off a single Popsicle. It turns out 1-cost items that draw a card upon entering play are just really good. In fact, they're so good that another card with a very similar effect, Fortisphere in Steel, was banned for being too good. Popsicle is kind of an innocuous card on its own, but when paired with the right combo piece, it can be incredibly powerful. Number 5, Prince John, greediest of all. Now I would argue that in Disney Lorcana, there are very few cards as polarizing as Prince John. If you are a green steel discard player, you absolutely love playing him, but if you're not, you dislike him very much. Another card from Disney Lorcana's second set, Rise of the Floodborn, Prince John became one of the primary resource advantage engines in green steel discard decks. Now, Prince John has 2 abilities. One of them says, whenever your opponent discards a card, you draw a card. And that means that anytime you force your opponent to discard a card, that is a 2-card swing in resources, and that is significant. And there are plenty of discard cards to pair Prince John with in Emerald, including Hypnotize, Sudden Chill, Ursula Deceiver. There are just so many. Now, as a green-steel player, Prince John allowed you to rapidly bury your opponent in card advantage while stripping away their resources at the same time. It was incredibly frustrating. But what was more frustrating is Prince John's second ability, Ward. Now, one of the things that Disney Lorcana players will occasionally complain about are cards with static abilities and Ward. Static abilities are those that are always on, they're always active whether or not that character is exerted and that you don't have to activate. These characters like Prince John, can just sit back there on your side of the board, counting their gold, doing whatever while their ability works, and you can't target them, you can't choose them with removal cards. They just sit there, and sit there, and sit there. And this makes Prince John incredibly frustrating to deal with because he's very hard to remove. And boy, did you want to remove him. It's also worth mentioning that sometimes Prince John punished you for using your own cards. Cards that say draw a card and discard a card, cards like A Whole New World which make you discard your whole hand. You couldn't use those without giving your opponent extra card advantage. And if it wasn't good enough, Prince John quests for 2. So later in the game, when your opponent manages to discard your entire hand and clear your entire board with all the cards that he's drawing, Prince John can happily close things out pretty quickly. Prince John was one of the defining cards in the green-steel discard archetype, an archetype so powerful that it won 2 Disney Lorcana challenges for a season, Las Vegas and Seattle. Number 4, Bucky Squirrel Squeak Tutor. Few cards in Disney Lorcana's history frustrated players quite like Bucky. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not even sure that players who played Bucky liked playing Bucky. Another card from Disney Lorcana's second set, Rise of the Floodborn, this 2-cost squirrel had 2 abilities. One said, whenever you play a Floodborn character, your opponent discards a card. The second ability was Ward. Do you remember what I said a few minutes ago about static abilities on warded characters? Cut, paste. Now, when Bucky was first released, he wasn't that bad. After all, there weren't that many really good Floodborn characters populating players' decks, and they didn't come out until the mid-game, usually. At least in Emerald and Steel. But here's the thing, in card games, new sets are always coming out. And consequently in Disney Lorcana, new Floodborn. And cheaper Floodborn. When Into the Inklands came out, we got cards like Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood. In Steel, a card that pairs well with the Emerald Steel discard strategy, and this card could shift out on 3. We also got Morph, a convenient shift target for a number of different Floodborn like that Robin Hood or Beast Tragic Hero, another incredibly powerful card. And then set 4 came out, Ursula's Return, and things got real. Ursula's Return gave Emerald Diablo a card which you could shift simply by discarding a card, and that meant you could shift it on turn 2, the same turn Bucky is played. Players began having nightmares about the sequence Diablo on turn 1 followed by Bucky and shift Diablo Devoted Herald on turn 2. It was a rough time, and again, since Bucky had Ward, he just sat back there, squeaking, doing his thing all game. He was very difficult to get rid of and forced you to discard constantly throughout the game. Eventually, things became so miserable that Ravensburger issued their very first errata, changing the text and the rules on Bucky's card. And in their statement at the time, Ravensburger acknowledged that Bucky decks were creating a, quote, stressful environment that just wasn't fun. They also acknowledged that this card took away player agency because Ward made Bucky, quote, close to untouchable. The errata increased Bucky's cost from 2 to 3, it took away Ward, and made his ability activate only when you shifted a Floodborn character into play, making this card not very good at all. It was a landmark moment for the game and proved that even Disney Lorcana developers realized just how powerful and annoying this little squirrel had become. Number 3, Sail the Azurite Sea. Since the earliest days of Disney Lorcana, Sapphire decks have wanted to do almost exclusively one thing on turn 2 of every game, and that is find a way to ink an additional card, also known as ramping. And this is part of Sapphire's core identity. Throughout the game, it accumulates ink faster than its opponent, allowing it to play big cards earlier. In the first chapter, you had One Jump Ahead, a 2-cost card which allowed you to put a card from the top of your deck into your inkwell face down and exerted. But this card had a major drawback. It was uninkable. Then in Shimmering Skies, we got Tipo, a 2-cost 1/2 who, when he was played, allowed you to put a card from your hand into your inkwell face down and exerted. Both of these cards ramped you on turn 2. And then during spoiler season for set 6, Azurite Sea, this card, the aptly named Sail the Azurite Sea, was revealed, and Sapphire players kind of freaked out. And this card solved some of Sapphire's turn 2 ramp problems. First off, Sail the Azurite Sea is inkable, unlike One Jump Ahead. In the later game, when you draw a 1 jump, you're kind of miserable about it, but Sail the Azurite Sea isn't a problem because you can either ink it or leverage it for its card draw. And that extra card that you're putting into your inkwell that turn, it is not exerted, it is ready, unlike the cards that you put in from Tipo and One Jump Ahead, meaning you can use that ink this turn if you have an extra popsicle or something sitting around. Sail the Azurite Sea is just a must include in almost any Sapphire deck because it really has no downside.
Sail the Azurite Sea is likely the best card in Lorcana. Not only because it really sounds like Sailor, but also because it lets you skip one of the worst costs in the game, which is the 2-cost slot. It also lets you skip the 3 to go straight to 4. And that 4 cost usually is able to outclass whatever your opponent did before that. Now we have examples like this new Merryweather in Sapphire that is a 4/5 forward. But historically, also, we cannot forget about Hiram Flaversham, who was able to generate a ton of card advantage as soon as turn 3 and forward. But the reason why Sail the Azurite Sea is the best of the turn 2 ramp is because in the later stages of the game, you can cycle it off if you draw it from the top when you're looking for a very powerful high cost card. Something that One Jump Ahead and Tipo just doesn't let you do, right? Just are very mediocre top decks on their own.
Number 2, Hiram Flaversham. Few cards in Disney Lorcana ever generated value as effortlessly as Hiram Flaversham. Introduced in Disney Lorcana's second set, Rise of the Floodborn, this card quickly became the engine behind Sapphire item decks by turning cheap items into overwhelming card advantage. His ability allowed players to banish an item in order to draw 2 cards, both when Hiram entered play and whenever he quested, which became absurdly efficient when it was paired with cards like Popsicle or Fortisphere. Suddenly, inexpensive items, many of which already replaced themselves, could be converted into even more card advantage, allowing Sapphire Steel decks and Ruby Sapphire decks to snowball quickly. Hiram was especially frustrating because his ability took effect when he entered play, before opponents even had a chance to interact with him. And even when players could, his 6 willpower was pretty high for that point in the game, so it wasn't uncommon for Hiram to go on 2 quests before he was banished. Altogether, Hiram created what Ravensburger eventually described as an insurmountable resource gap. Ravensburger explained that the combination led to gameplay that felt virtually unstoppable and less enjoyable for opponents. And later, they banned Hiram Flaversham from Infinity as well, because his resource generation remained too efficient for the format.
Having the repeatable ability to banish an item that already drew you a card in the first place, to draw 2 more cards over and over and over again, is unlike anything else that we've seen in the game. Hiram Flaversham Toymaker was so good that it is the only card to receive a ban in both Core and Infinity formats.
Before we move on, if you're enjoying this top 10 list video and want to see more like it or other Lorcana content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We try to post videos weekly about what's going on in the world of Lorcana, from the meta to product reviews, deck lists, all that kind of stuff. So if you like that content, please consider subscribing, it helps a lot. Before we reveal our top pick, here are a couple honorable mentions. Ariel Spectacular Singer, a 3-cost Singer 5 that allows you to look at the top 4 cards of your deck to find a song. The Muses, Proclaimers of Heroes. Now this worded character allows you to return a character with strength 2 or less to their player's hand whenever you play a song. And finally, number 1, Diablo, Devoted Herald. You're drawing a card? I'll draw a card. You draw a card? Draw a card? You draw a card, I draw a card. Few cards define the Season 1 Emerald Steel discard era quite like Diablo Devoted Herald. Released in Disney Lorcana's 4th set, Ursula's Return, Diablo quickly became one of the most efficient card advantage engines the game had ever seen. Diablo has 3 abilities which work in tandem to make him really annoying. First is his card draw ability, which says that when Diablo is exerted during your opponent's turn, whenever they draw a card, you draw a card, leading to the Emerald Steel catchphrase, you draw, I draw. Second, Diablo is evasive, meaning he can only be challenged by evasive characters. And third, Diablo is a Floodborn, but his shift cost is kind of unique. Rather than using ink to shift him, you discard an action, and that means that you can get him into play for pretty cheap on any turn you want. In fact, you could shift him on turn 1 if you really wanted to. And being able to shift him into play is really important because his card draw ability requires him to be exerted. This means that if you shift him into play on top of a character that's already dry, you can quest or sing a song with him immediately, turning on his card draw ability, ensuring that Diablo will at the very least replace himself before he's removed. And Diablo's shift targets are actually kind of useful. The 1-cost Maleficent Spy in Emerald, for example, allows you to look at your opponent's hand when he's played. There's also some great shift targets in Amethyst. The thing that made Diablo really annoying is that many decks have card draw built into their strategy. For example, item decks want to draw with Hiram in the mid-game. Amethyst decks want to start leveraging rabbits in the mid-game to draw cards to refill their hand. And Diablo punishes you for pursuing your script, the script of your deck, by drawing cards. And sometimes you needed to draw cards in order to find the tools to remove him. A Diablo, if left unchecked for 2 or 3 turns in the mid-game, means your opponent basically wins the game through card advantage. And also, Diablo's abilities taken all together allowed for one of the most busted openings in all of Disney Lorcana. Turn 1, Diablo Maleficent Spy, look at your opponent's hand. Turn 2, discard an action to shift Devoted Herald into play, exert him to quest, or sing a song like Let the Storm Rage On to affect your opponent's board, or Sudden Chill to affect your opponent's hand, and pass the turn. If your opponent isn't able to remove Diablo in a turn or two, the game could be over from there. I cannot emphasize enough how much Diablo warped the entire meta, because every single deck had to run numerous cards to remove him and remove him early. Having a Diablo answer was critical. And for these reasons, Diablo Devoted Herald is the most powerful card that Disney Lorcana has ever printed.
Yeah, Diablo is just hands down one of the best cards ever printed. The best things you can be doing in this game are drawing cards, and Diablo lets you do that, and Diablo punishes your opponent for trying to do that. It's evasive, so it's not easily answered, and it's one of the few ways to sing removal on turn 2. It's just like hands down one of the best things you can be doing, and it's a fun time to play. Who doesn't like drawing extra cards?
So that's it for our list of the top 20 most powerful Disney Lorcana cards ever printed. But what is your list? What did we get right and what did we get wrong? What would you put at the top? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.